I'm Jeremy. I'm the assistant pastor here. Not Justin, I know. They're on vacation, though, so I get to do this week. I'm really excited to be here with you guys this morning. I'm excited to be back in this place again. I love being here and worshiping together. I can't wait to get back to the whole thing. I can't wait to have everybody back. If you're watching it online, I cannot wait for all of us to be back in the same place again. It's going to be really exciting. I've been excited about it for a while, okay? So this week, I'm going to finish our junk drawer series. It's not really a junk drawer series. It's kind of been a core, not core series. About more than that. Last January, we went through a series called Core, where we just broke down some vineyard distinctives. And we've actually been doing that lately, the last few weeks. Justin and I have been talking about vineyard distinctives. We haven't really called it a core series, though, but that's basically what it is. But this week, I get to do the last one, okay? This is the last one we're going to talk about, at least for a while. Justin is going to start a new series next week called Out of the Box. Pretty excited about that series, too. So this week, we're going to talk about what this last distinctive, and it is God's mission has us, okay? It's kind of a confusing little statement there. I've read it several times in this week, and it gets confusing every time, okay? So what happens with these distinctives is they actually have a lot more language that goes along with these Vineyard USA distinctives. If you've ever been on the website, there's more language that goes into each one of these. The last one that I talked about was ordinary people and an extraordinary God. And those 4 words really summed up that whole distinctive, though. And so there wasn't really need for us to talk about the rest of it. Right? There wasn't need to dive into the rest of the wording. But for this one, I think it's really important that we do talk about the rest of the wording because I think until we read the whole thing and we understand the first part of this distinctive, it's really hard for us to get how God's mission has us, okay? So real fast, we're just going to read the whole thing. I say the whole thing. It's really only like one more sentence, but we're going to read it anyways, all right? So it actually says, the whole thing says, we are a people seized by something beyond ourselves and turned into something new. Rather than us having a mission, God's mission has us. We're going to break it down just a little bit here. And the first thing I want to touch on is something that I feel like we've talked about a lot lately. Justin jokes about the fact that we might talk about it every week, but we're not really sorry that we talk about it every week because it's a really important thing. It's really huge news. And it's that idea that we're turned into something new, right? When we accept that gift of salvation, when we become Christians, we're no longer that old person, right? We're something new. We're a new creature, a new creation. We have a new nature. The way that Justin described it the first time that I remember, and I might be just Jeremy memory, but the first time I remember him describing it was, we're no longer sinners saved by grace, right? Because in that, we identify as sinners still, right? That's not what we are anymore. We've become something new. We've been given a new nature when we accept that gift of salvation from Jesus. And so I think, personally, when I read this distinctive, I think that in order for us to understand how God's mission has us and to understand really what that means, we first have to understand and believe that we've become something new. That in our salvation, we've actually been given a new heart. We've become a new creation. That we're no longer that old person who was walking around the earth, a sinner, right? We're no longer that anymore. We're something more. We're something new, okay? So we have to understand that first before we can get into the rest of this distinctive. And again, more than understanding it, I think we actually need to believe it as a church. Right? We have to believe that as a people so we can understand how God's mission has us. All right? So I wanted to break that down. I wanted to talk about that first because, again, I don't think that we can understand one without the other. And so now we're going to read that second half, the rather than us having a mission, God's mission has us. This is the confusing part to me, okay? Because when you read this last part here, God's mission has us, that's a very confusing little statement. It's a very weirdly worded little statement. And before we get into what that actually means, I think we have to talk about what God's mission is, okay? And for me, the way that I understand what God's mission is not the plan that he has for me, right? God's got a plan for my life. That's a verse in Jeremiah. Not the plan for our church, not the plan for the Big C church, right? Not a plan for us individually, but what is God's mission? What is the overall mission that God has here in this world? And the way that I understand it, the way that I've come to understand the mission, is God's mission is to draw people closer to himself and to grow the kingdom of heaven. That's all God wants to do. He wants to bring people into the kingdom of heaven, right? Jesus came down here to give us a way for salvation, right? To give us a way to be saved, to give us a way to enter the kingdom of heaven, because we couldn't do it on our own. And that's God's mission. That's the whole mission. And I don't want you guys to just sit there and be like, you know what, Jeremy said it, it's got to be true, because trust me, that's not always right. But, so let's read a verse, right? We're going to read the Great Commission in Matthew. It's Matthew 28:18 through 20. And this is Jesus talking to his disciples, okay? He's giving them the Great Commission. And it says, Jesus came up and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And I am with you always, even to the ends of the age. That's the mission right there, right? Jesus tells the disciples that that's the mission. Go out into the world, teach people, and then baptize people. The symbology, the symbolism of baptism, and I think this is from Ian. I could be wrong. Again, not all the things that Jeremy says is right. But the way that Ian describes baptism, or it has described baptism to me, is that the old you goes under the water, and that new creation is what comes out, right? And that's not like you know what, until you get baptized, you're not a new creation, right? That is an outward expression of an inward thing. Something that's happened in your heart that you're now sharing with the world. So Jesus tells the disciples to go out and lead people to the kingdom, right? Go out and bring people into the kingdom, because once you become a Christian, once that's something that's a choice that you've made, you're part of the kingdom, right? Once you've become a new creation, you've been baptized, you've got a new heart, a new nature, you're a part of the kingdom. So Jesus shared the mission with his disciples here to go out into the nations and to grow the kingdom, right? So that's God's mission. So now, what does it mean for the mission to have us? God's mission has us, that little phrase, right? To me, it's really confusing. It's like, all right, I can understand if like maybe God's got me, but like, what does it mean for the mission to have me? What does that look like? What does that mean? And it doesn't actually say that we have God's mission. Okay, do you guys see the difference right there? When I say, if it were to say, rather than us having a mission, we have God's mission, and rather than us having a mission, God's mission has us. To me, those are two very distinct, very different things. And I think we need to see the difference between them. Because, I lost my spot. That's okay. I flipped too many pages, I'm sorry. God's mission, it has us, right? They're two different things. And I want us to take us back to the very first part of this distinctive, okay? We talked about being turned into something new, looking at that idea of becoming a new creation. But before that, it actually says that we are seized by something beyond ourselves. We are a people seized by something beyond ourselves. That means that something has taken over us. That's God. To me, that's God. God is beyond us, and God has seized our lives. He's taken over our lives, which means that God's mission is a part of who we are. God's mission is in us. It is who we are. There's no getting away from the mission. The mission has captured our lives. That's what God's mission is. That God's mission is a part of who we are. This is no longer a mission that we're going to go out and we're going to search for, okay? Right? If we were supposed to have God's mission, we would go out and search for it, right? And to me, I see that as, I'm going to go out and I'm looking and I'm trying to figure out what God's mission is, and then I go, ooh, I got God's mission now. I figured it out. You see this? I'm going to go do this thing because this is God's mission. I found it. That's a lot of me right there. That's a lot of I found. I know what the mission is. I did this. I found it. I figured out what I'm supposed to do. But that's not what we have to do, right? The mission is a part of who we are. It's no longer something that we're searching for, that we have to find in our lives, that we have to figure out, what steps am I supposed to be taking? Well, guess what? If you're a part of the mission, if you are following God's mission of leading people into the kingdom, that's it. If you're doing anything else, if you think there's any other reason, any other mission that God has, that's not the right thing. We're supposed to be following that one mission that God has. And I think the other way that I look at this phrase is, in my head, I take it straight into a sports world. When you say, I've got you, right? That's a phrase that as a college athlete I heard a lot, right? You hear it on the baseball field, on the soccer field, on the basketball court. You hear, man, I've got your back. I've got you, right? And that's just a way for us to tell somebody that in this situation, in this game, in this whatever it is, in this part of your life, no matter what happens here, I'm with you. No matter what happens here, I've got your back. If you make a mistake right here, I'm still there. I still have you, right? And so when I read that part of this that says God's mission has us, that's how I think. That's where my mind goes. It goes to, you know what? In my life, in situations where I'm truly walking with God's mission, that God's mission has us. It has me. And what does that look like? How does that look? Well, to me, it looks like this. You hear a lot, being on the prayer team here, I hear a lot of, you know what, I'm not really comfortable praying with somebody because what if I say the wrong thing? And I know that's a feeling that a lot of people feel. What if I say the wrong thing when I'm praying with somebody? What if I'm consoling someone, I'm just trying to love on that person, and I just don't know what I'm supposed to say next? What if I do the wrong thing? What if I say the wrong thing? And I think that as long as we are walking in God's mission, as long as we are walking with the mission in our heart, that God's mission is actually being accomplished, whether we say the right thing or not. Okay? Because, get this, when you pray with somebody, you have an opportunity to pray with somebody. Let's say you're at work and somebody needs prayer, or you're at school and someone needs something prayed for, or you're just out in the community or with your family and someone needs prayer. You start praying with that person. And first of all, if you say the wrong thing, our God does not work in a way of, you know what, Jeremy said that person needed this. I know they need something else, but because Jeremy asked for the wrong thing, I'm going to give them the wrong thing because that's what they asked for. All right, that's not how our God works. Our God knows what we need before we even come to him in prayer. So your prayer with that person, God already knows what it is. He's already going to be working in that way. Okay? But I want you to recognize how other people see what's happening in that interaction. How I believe other people see what's happening in that interaction. When you go to pray with somebody, whether you say the right thing or not, what that person is going to take away from that time, that situation with you is, man, that person really just took a time out of their day to sit here with me and to care about me. To sit here with me and to listen to me and to talk to me and to love me. They didn't have to do that, right? You probably could have gotten away with not being a part of that situation, but you didn't. You chose. You made a choice to be in that situation. And so in that moment, when people see you loving like Jesus loved, when they see you caring like Jesus cared, you are, in fact, spreading the word of Jesus, aren't you? You are spreading Jesus' teachings through your actions. Even if you say the wrong thing, you're still spreading Jesus' teachings through the way that you're acting and the way you're treating those people. So the mission is still being accomplished. Whether you're saying the right thing or not, the mission is still being accomplished because people are drawing closer to God because of the way that we're acting, because of the way you acted in that situation. And I know that the problem is sometimes a little bit deeper than maybe I won't say the right thing. For me, the problem was deeper than maybe I'll say the wrong thing. When I started in youth ministry, and Cameron, the youth guy in Lexington, when he was explaining to me what I was going to be doing with these students, my thought wasn't, whoa, I'm not going to say the right thing. My thought was, whoa, I'm not the right person, right? I am not the right guy for this situation. And Ian, thank you. I don't think that I'm alone in that feeling, that I am not the right person. At that point, I was like, by no means am I a preacher. I'm still learning about this whole faith thing myself. How am I supposed to be leading these students to Jesus? What am I supposed, how do I say, I don't even know what to do at this point. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not the right guy. There's no way that I am qualified for this situation. That's really the feeling that we get when we don't know if we're going to say the right thing or if we're the right person, right? And I'm going to tell you this morning that you are the right person, okay? We're going to look at a verse, and we're going to look at it a little bit of an unconventional light. I'll tell you why in a minute, but let's just read the verse, all right? The verse is 1 Corinthians 12. It's 12 through 15, okay? And it says, just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all the many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. We were all baptized by one Spirit, so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slaves or free. We were all given one Spirit to drink. And so the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now, if a foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. Okay? Like I said, so I'm gonna take it a little bit unconventional, a little bit different way. Okay? A lot of times when I hear this verse personally, when I've heard this verse taught on, it's oftentimes taught in a sense of everybody's got a place to serve in the church, right? You might not be into kids ministry, but maybe you'd be great in the production booth, right? You might not be on the worship team, but you'd be great on the host team, right? Everybody's got a different place to serve. Well, I'm going to take it in a little bit different light because right now we're talking about growing the body, right? Growing the body of Christ, the kingdom of heaven. So what happens when a body grows? A little human body, a little human baby. One of the ladies at the Stewart home actually just had a baby. That's probably why this came into my mind this week. But what happens, right? Really quick, not going to go into a lot of it, but like cells divide and they get differentiated and they get told, you know what, these cells are going to be brain cells and these ones are going to be lungs and hearts and eyes and skin and all of the different cells, right? They get differentiated into different parts. What would happen if that didn't happen? If there was no differentiation, if we all were the same thing, we would get one really big organ, right? At the root of it, we'd get one really big organ. We would not have a body, though, would we? The body would never grow because we would just have one organ. That's all it would be. And I'm going to go farther than to say that every one of us has a part to play in this body, in the growing of this body. Because when I say that and when I hear that, it makes me think, you know what, everybody's got a part to play. Some parts might not be as important as other parts, but that's not what I'm saying, okay? This morning I want you guys to understand that we've actually all been given the exact same command. As Christians, as people who are saved, have accepted the gift of salvation from Jesus and become disciples of Jesus, we've been given the same command that Jesus gave his 11 disciples in the Great Commission, to go out and to grow the kingdom of heaven. And that might not look like being up here on Sunday morning and preaching, or being on the worship team and leading that, or being in kids ministry or youth ministry. That might not be the way that it looks in your life. But I think that every day, day in and day out, we have opportunities to grow the kingdom of heaven. Right? Every chance that we have, every one of those little opportunities that you have, I air quote the word little, and I'll tell you why, but every time that you have one of those opportunities to just talk to somebody, to be a listening ear for somebody, to say a prayer with somebody, is an opportunity to help lead somebody, to help guide somebody into the kingdom of heaven. I air quote the word little because, to me, I don't think that there are any little situations, little opportunities when it comes to leading someone to Jesus. When it comes to bringing Jesus into somebody's life, I don't think that there are little opportunities. I think that every opportunity is a big one. Because, like I talked about 2 weeks ago, I don't think that our God works in little ways. I think that our God works in big ways. I think our God is extraordinary. And that means, to me, that small chance, that little opportunity that you have to talk to that one person, to say a prayer with that person, that could be a small part of the extraordinary work that God is doing in that life. It could be the smallest part of an extraordinary work that God is doing. But until we accept the fact that we are following God's mission, that we are a part of God's mission, we're going to miss those opportunities, right? And we cannot afford to miss those opportunities because they might seem little to us. But believe me, in the long run, those are extraordinary chances for somebody else's life, right? So this morning, as we're talking about God's mission, we're diving into what God's mission is, how God's mission has our backs, being a part of it. I realize that one of the cornerstones, I guess you'd call them cornerstones, of our church here is mission, right? Grace, family, mission are 3 words that we have up on our wall, and they're on most of our backgrounds. That's a part of our church here. And so I didn't want to just skip over this fact and miss being able to talk about it, because I think it's important. But I actually want to talk about how our church, this little building here, how we fulfill God's mission, how we start playing our part in God's mission. Yeah, you can come up and join me. That's fine. I want to talk about it, okay? And the way that Justin described it to me when I brought this up to him was kind of concentric circles, okay? Those are circles that fit inside each other. So the first one is grace. Our first one is grace, all right? And that's a grace that we understand individually, personally. I understand what this grace is in my life, right? We start accepting God's grace, this gift of God's grace in our own lives on an individual level. We start to see it play out in our lives. We start to see how God's grace has saved our lives, has changed our lives, okay? So once we have it in our life, that's our first circle, is grace, individual grace. And then we have our second circle, which is family. And I'm talking about this family right here, not your families at home, this family right here, this church family. And once we understand grace in our own lives, we can start to understand grace in our families, in our church lives. We start to give grace inside this church, inside this family here. We start to receive grace inside this family, right? And it helps us grow. It helps us start to trust each other and to grow as a family and grow as a community so that we can go out and do that third circle, which is mission, which is going out into the community and spreading that individual grace that we have found, that we have understand, that we believe. And in the community, in that mission, we as a church have a hope that the people that we are interacting with will experience that grace, whether that be through the words that we say or through the actions that we take. People will experience that grace. And the goal is, the hope is, that those people, after experiencing grace, will start to understand grace in their lives, right? They'll start to get the grace in their lives. And then, for instance, in our church, they come join this family. They come join this church family here. And they start to see how grace works in a community like this, where people are giving and receiving grace freely. And then that same person gets to go out and help us on our mission and spread the grace into the community. See how the kingdom of heaven grows in that? And more so when you don't think about it just here in this family. What about in the Big C church family? Every time we spread grace to somebody, every time this church spreads grace to somebody, they have an opportunity to not just join this church, but to join the church down the road or to join a different church and to share the grace they've felt here from us with that family and in that community. And then the growth just happens, right? We just continue to grow and grow. The more people that we interact with, the more people we share this grace with, the more the kingdom can grow. That's how our church is doing our part to fulfill God's mission. Grace Family Mission, being in the community, understanding grace for ourselves, giving it freely in this family, and then going out into the community and spreading it. Okay, so this morning, we're going to continue in our worship time. And while we're worshiping, I'm not really sure, to be honest with you, about prayer, but I'll go back there, and if anybody wants prayer, I'll be back there this morning, okay? And I would love to pray with you guys, but I really want people to take a minute and to think about those seemingly little opportunities that God is putting in your life day in and day out. Whether you're taking them now or you're not. I want you guys to think about those opportunities. Think about what God could be doing in those opportunities if you were to follow the mission. If you were to follow his mission and just go interact with that person. Just go pray with that person. Just go love that person in some way. Think about the ways that God is working. And again, if you guys want prayer for anything, I'm going to go back there and I would love to pray with you guys, whether it's about something that's happening, one of these opportunities, and needing courage or faith, whatever, for those opportunities, or if it's about something completely different. Okay, it does not matter what you're looking for prayer for. I will go back there and I would love to pray with you guys, okay? So let's all stand up and let's continue in our time of worship together.